villains. For every good guy, there must be the bad guy. Society looks upon villains with disdain because they refuse to follow the rules. But are these villains really bad or misunderstood? Are they truly out for chaos and blood? Or are they more willing to get out of their comfort zone than the average Joe? Join us for our Villain of the Month discussion. We will break down their philosophy, their past, and their psychology. And then you decide for yourself if these villains are humans or if they are monsters.
All right. Well, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the series, The Villain of the Month. I am your host, Sigma Jones. The co-hosts here, JJ, Starwind, and Aizen Sama is here with us as well. First and foremost, we just want to give a shout out to our subscribers. Thanks for listening in. Thanks for tuning in. We truly appreciate the love and support. Hope you all are doing well this Memorial Day weekend, wherever you are around the world. So, as you see from the title, the villain of the month for the month of May is none other than Sosuke Aizen. So, we definitely got a lot to talk about and discuss with this particular villain. But before I do so, I gotta introduce the guys here with us to help us with this discussion. So, starting off, I have my man JJ Starwind, and you guys already know his intro.
I'm not going there to die. I'm going to find out if I'm really alive.
Yes, sir, indeed. So, JJ, how's it going, man? Oh, JJ, we can't hear you at the moment. Uh, let's see. Okay, while he's working on his audio, we'll circle back with him. But next one up is the man who is one of the inspirations for this series and is going to be helping us with the intro, or not intro, but the topic of today with Sosuke Aizen. And that's none other than Aizen Sama.
All creatures need to obey. No one can survive without trusting someone they feel is better, more worthy than themselves. To avoid that responsibility, those who are worthy look even higher, searching for more superior beings. And those superiors do the same, looking for even stronger individuals they can believe in. That is how all kings are created. It is also how gods are born.
So what's going on, Mr. Aizen Sama?
Hello. Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Man, that intro, I still like it every time. And the intro that you have for this villain of the month podcast at New in there with the voiceover from Teapot. That was awesome as well with the visuals and everything. Man, I'm just ready to, I'm excited about for us to dive into this content, dive into the mind of Aizen Sosuke and have a real good discussion and just see what his world and what his mind is all about.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And again, shout out to Teapot for the voiceover of the intro. He did an excellent job working with me and SKC in regards to that intro. So definitely want to give a shout out to him for that. But all right, let's go ahead and get right into it. So, Sosuke Aizen. For those who don't know, he was the main villain that started off in Bleach, especially when you go into the Soul Society arc and the Arrancar arc and a little bit of afterwards and all. He was the guy who essentially he essentially did a lot of the brains of the series. And we're definitely going to get into a little bit about that and all. But to start off, Aizen, what drew you to Sosuke as far as when you first start getting into the series?
Um, the first thing that grabbed me about him was, most villains, the writing here was perfect. Most villains, you could kind of tell that they're the villain right off. Um, During that season 3, I believe it was, they did everything they could to make him unassuming. Then on top of it, you thinking that he actually died. And then when everything starts unfolding, and it gets down to it when Toshiro gets there. Well, actually when Hinamori gets there first, and then when Toshiro gets there, it's like, yes, oh, this is the guy that's behind it all. I think that whole writing of him masterfully being something that no one thought he was, and then him being even more powerful. And I think his mind is what drew me to the mastermind style of villain as well. And then as the series went on, all of the profound quotes and accurate things he said. I mean, even in that first moment when he revealed himself as a villain, I mean, it was so awesome and thought provoking, and that's what drew me to it. What about you?
Yeah, for me it was the same thing as well. And while we're waiting for JJ Wilson to come through, he's just switching computers. That's what kind of drew me with Sosuke Aizen. There were very few villains who were methodical and pretty much were playing chess with everybody when it comes down to his methods and what they did and everything. Like, I know last month we talked about Magneto, and we shared about how Magneto, for the most part, he was only looking after himself and mutants like him. And I get the same inkling when I watch Aizen. Because with Aizen, it was just, look, I'm going to do my thing. If you're with me on it, cool. If you're not with me on it, well, hey, hopefully you don't get killed in the process. But at the end of the day, he just had this intellect with him that you really don't see with a lot of villains. Because most of the time, and this goes not just with anime, this also goes with, regular cartoons and comics as well.
Everything.
Yeah, television. They create villains where they just all bronze. And so to speak, you have to muscle your way to defeat them and everything. And for the most part, yeah, when I was a kid, I thought that was pretty cool with the villains. But then as I got like in my teenage years and then now into adulthood, it's just like, nah, I prefer the villains who have that intellect, who actually make you kind of question reality, and that sort of thing. And Sasuke really brings that out with a lot of the characters.
Right. And the thing that I liked about him, he wasn't he wasn't a mastermind villain that wasn't physically capable of doing the job too. He he put me in the mind as far as with his planning. Well, I can't say put me in the mind of. I said somebody else kind of was similar to him to me as far as with the planning would be Yoko Karama from Yu Yu Hakusho.
You're right.
Now Aizen, I would still say it's a little bit, it's different in how they done it, but their level of planning for everything, they dotted every I and crossed every T. So it's just amazing. And when it got into the philosophy and the teachings that Eisen did, I can't remember. I looked it up a while back. I'd have to look again, but there was a Japanese philosopher teacher that he was supposedly based upon, who kind of um I guess he was kind of like an ambassador or mediator between the Japanese Empire and China at the time. But it's very, I mean, just the things, his teaching methods, and and how calm he was even when he spoke. It is just amazing.
Right. And it's that's another thing too that kind of like for me put Aizen up there as like a top villain in my books. No matter the situation, you rarely saw him get out of his emotions
Yes.
or get into his emotions because really he didn't really have emotions at all if you think about it. But it was only when the Hugioku, yeah,
Oh, Yoku,
Hugioku,
yes.
only when that thing turned against him is when he got out of his emotions because he didn't plan for that. But everything else, methodical and all, even if there's like a slight hiccup, never was out of character.
and, and I would argue that the because I look at it differently. I've watched it so much. I would argue that the whole Gyoku didn't really even turn against him.
Okay. Wow,
I,
that's
I would
interesting.
I would argue that in the end it gave him what he wanted.
That is interesting. Well, before we get into that, JJ joined us back on. So, are you cool now, Jay?
I think so.
Yeah, you covered it loud and clear. So cool. So, JJ, let me ask you, like, what has been your experience in regards to your understanding of Sasuke Aizen?
Well, Bonjour, everybody. I haven't watched the entirety of the Bleach series, but from the little bit I've seen, dude, Aizen is like so methodical in his way of not only using people, but just to get his point across with his goals, with the little bit that I've seen, like, especially that scene that you showed me with him fighting Ichigo, the main character, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And he's basically telling an old guy, like, I know your whole evolution. Like, I know exactly how you are from the time you were spawned upon all the way to this point that as you're fighting me. Like, that's crazy. Like, that is, whoa. He pretty much seen how he pretty much fought everybody that Ichigo encountered up until the time that he fought Aizen. It's just like, dang, he's probably like 1, 2, 3 steps ahead of everybody, it seems, throughout the Bleach series at one point. But sorry if I missed most of the conversation here with technical issues and everything. But how exactly does Aizen get defeated? I mean, after he encounters Ichigo, or was it something else that happened?
So actually, we were just talking about that.
Okay.
So essentially, one of the things that Aizen did before he left Soul Society is he looked for the Hogyoku. And once he got a hold of that, he had to wait until it awakened and everything for its full potential so he could utilize it. Now, me and Aizen Sama, we were just talking about how, so towards the end of the Wako Mundo arc and everything, the Hogyoku essentially turned on him, and that's how he was defeated. But Aizen Sama, a good friend here, He is of the belief that the Hokioku actually didn't turn on him. It gave him what he wanted.
Mm, wow.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, so we were just still expounding on that before you
yeah,
came up.
yeah.
Okay.
Because one of the reasons why I said it gave him what he wanted, um, in the end, when Urahara Kisuke and Ichigo were having that conversation, and Ichigo said that he sensed loneliness in his sword. Um, whenever you look at if you looked at it, you notice that he's really only even complimented about four individuals: um, Gin Ichimaru, Ichigo Kurosaki, Urahara Kisuke, and Yamamoto Gimryu-sai. And all four of them for their own reasons. The reason why I said that basically the Hogyoku gave him what he wanted. What he wanted most. I mean, if you think about it, when Ginryu Sai established the Gote, the 13 Gote, if you go into the Thousand Year Blood War, you see that it was a bunch of killers and murderers.
Oh yeah.
They were thugs. Um, the way they did things, it was bad. And then finally Yamamoto feels guilty about all of it. So now who takes over Central 46? And that's nothing more than your typical, what do you want to say, powerful as far as financial wise and class wise, uh, individuals who are no more than thugs, but they can't kill anybody, but they can influence things. So
They
you
they
get
were your
grimy.
modern they were your
Yes.
modern day American politicians.
Oh
Politicians
wow.
and wealthy individuals. Yes, yes, yes. Other people to do your dirty work while you do all the other dirty stuff and protect the other dirty people. So, so my whole thing is that what Ichigo and Aizen both wanted in the end was to change Soul Society. Their whole fight did that.
Exactly. And I wanted to touch up on SKC's comment. He said he'll be coming through in a bit, but he don't agree with Aizen's speech about trust. And we're definitely going to touch on that coming through. But actually right now I want to at least start touching up on some of the quotes from Sosuke Aizen that we can kind of jump into. And so I'm just pulling it up here. So here's one of his first quotes. It says, "Any betrayal you can see is trivial. What is truly frightening and much more lethal is the betrayal you cannot see." So, JJ, I'm going to start with you. What's your thoughts on that particular quote?
Mm, that's a deep one too, because if you already know what's coming, then there's no surprises whatsoever, even if you're the bad guy. But if you can't read your opponent and what his plans are, then you're definitely going to be caught by surprise, and your reign of terror or succession for power is going to be cut short. So that's one way I could look at it there. Like that's wow, that's pretty deep.
Interesting. And then I'm what's your take?
Well, my take is that misreading misreading your opponent's plans is what's really frightening. Thinking, picturing everything that you think, and you can see which ways they can, and then them doing something completely different that you could not account for, and misreading what they're actually about. Um, that was one of the things about him. Everyone thought that they knew him. They thought that they knew what he was about, but none of them actually really even knew him. Um, the only one who actually really even knew him was Gin Ichimaru. I would even argue almost better than himself, actually. Whenever
Yeah.
you get into the Thousand Year Blood War, um, but it's what you cannot see, the one you cannot plan for. That's what that's what's truly frightening.
Yeah. To me, my interpretation of that quote is you a person cannot see betrayal if they already know the person who's doing it was going to do it in the first place. In other words, is pretty much talking about having hindsight about people's characters. Aizen clearly can see right through people and can tell if somebody trusts him way too much or individuals who simply did not like him, but he can still utilize them in some form or fashion. And so it's kind of like what Aizen is saying is don't be so quick to try to be camaraderie with individuals who have questionable pasts, because if you can see their character and see who they are, then when they go astray, you're not going to be surprised by it because you already knew who they are. But it's the people who you kind of like gain too much trust and too much ability with them that all of a sudden when they go astray, it's just like, wow, I just did not see that.
Or even those who you knew you didn't want to be around. You knew something was off, but you completely dismissed them too early before you could even figure what they're about to even plan of how you would even, guard and protect yourself.
Wow.
As well.
Yeah. JJ, were you about to say something?
No, I'm trying to get a better understanding of Aizen's mind because it's very methodical in in his character. So yeah.
Yes, indeed. Well, we are joined by another one of our good crew and everything, and that is Mr. SKC. So I gotta play this intro. Yeah, actually perfect timing. So SKC, what's going on, sir?
Hey, well, what's going on? What's going on, man? I was listening in. I haven't watched the series in its entirety, but I did get to go through some of the clips and read up on a few things. And yeah, I mean, overall, I thought it was a very interesting villain. Of course, tons of strengths and a variety of just overwhelming ability. So it was very interesting. I hope to be able to watch it in its entirety in the future. I would say one of the main things that I had an issue with though is the quote about trust.
Well, before you get to that, I actually got the clip right now. So we'll go ahead and watch this particular clip so everybody can see what SKC is talking about. And we'll definitely kind of hit up on the trust thing because, like I said, it was perfect time at SKC to come up before this clip. So without further ado, here it is.
You don't get it. Trust is the same thing as reliance. It's a fault of cowards. I have no need for such weakness.
That's pretty rich coming from a guy who surrounds himself with henchmen. But you trick your subordinates into trusting you with that fast-talking silver tongue of yours.
Not quite. I have many subordinates, many who've pledged themselves to me, but I've never asked for any of their trust. Yes, I've asked for their allegiance, but faith is another matter altogether. In fact, I always told them to never trust anyone, including myself. Unfortunately, though, I've met no one who is strong enough to actually heed that warning. All creatures need to obey. No one can survive without trusting someone they feel is better, more worthy than themselves. To avoid that responsibility, those who are worthy look even higher, searching for more superior beings. And those superiors do the same, looking for even stronger individuals they can believe in. That is how all kings are created. It is also how gods are born. But please, don't believe me yet, Shinji Hinako. I'm going to take my time and show you which god you should have faith in. And afterwards, you'll decide what to believe.
Okay, so that is Aizen's famous quote when it talks about trust. So right now I'm going to go round robin, and then we'll go into a deeper discussion of it then. But to start off, SKC, because you are against this quote, can you share with us your thoughts on that?
Sure. Well, I think the fatal flaw in the logic is connecting trust with strength. In it, he made it seem as though trust it only works within a framework of power. Trust the people who are more powerful than you, and then believe in them because of their power, and then go up to where you get into this God mode, where people are elevated to that point. But I think some of since he is a strategist, I would think that one could understand that you could trust people to be themselves, trust people to follow certain ways of action that they've already established over quite some time. Also, in when I was reading on this a little bit, and you guys can correct me, was not someone who he fought stated that he felt some immense loneliness in his blade when he was fighting with him?
Yeah, that was actually brought up. That was actually brought up by in the chat where it was Ichigo, the main protagonist in the story, where he said when he was fighting Aizen and when their blades touched, he sensed a loneliness in his blade. So there's definitely that. But
I would link that to loneliness, and I would think that it would be difficult to truly fulfill that without having trust in someone.
Okay, so I'll definitely want to ponder on that. But before we continue, my good sir and co-host for the War Room Logic's Finest is here, and I also got to play his intro.
I'm so disappointed, Ichigo. So very disappointed. Sadly, your sword exhibits only fear. When you counter, it's because you fear being killed. When you attack, you fear killing. And when you try to protect someone, you fear you could let them die. The only thing that your sword speaks of is senseless fright. and that's not good. What you do not need in battle is fear. Nothing will come of it. You counter, you don't let them cut you. If you protect someone, you don't let them die. When you attack, you kill.
All right, so that's Mr. Logic's finest. How is it going, sir? Well, I don't know if he's still away and everything. We'll come back to you, Logic Finest. So, JJ, what are your thoughts on the quote?
Hmm. I thought it was a very telling phrase of words that he was talking about with Aizen. I think during that confrontation, he with who was it? Shinji.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yes.
So with Shinji, weren't those two like partners at one time? Because uh, didn't didn't he break away from their group like in the beginning of the series? I'm trying to.
Not partners. Ken Shinji Hariko was actually his captain, and
Right.
he
Mhm.
was his lieutenant
Ah,
during the time.
so I guess I get the sense that he was trying to move ahead of him because I guess he probably didn't like the way he was operating. And so I guess he felt that during that whole trust conversation, like even though he told all of his comrades not to believe in his words, like I guess because he was so charismatic and he was so confident in his abilities, he's like, I'm just gonna have to show you how I'm gonna do things, and I'm gonna do it so much better than you would ever do it. That's kind of the gist I got off that conversation. It sounded very bold and brazen in a way, you know. So I was like, yeah, I can see where he's coming from, but I can also kind of see where SKC is coming from too. That it sounds like the whole trust factor is just like a scaling of power and boldness in a way to kind of like get to where you want in the world. So yeah, that's kind of my thoughts about it.
Interesting. Good point. Aizen Sapa, what's your take, good sir?
Okay. My take basically is um Logic's finest brought up a point in the chat that you can't get around it, which is exactly basically true. He's connecting or linking trust with reliance and faith, as well as belief. And it makes me think of a quote from Smallville by Lionel Luther when he was telling Chloe Sullivan that because of our emotions and our feelings and our trust in our friends closest to us, we can't see them for all their flaws and foibles. This is why, to me, what he says is it ends up being actually true because, along with everything else he said, with people not wanting the responsibility to be strong, they actually don't want to be responsible for their own fate and how it turns out. So they look for someone else who's more capable than them to actually do it. Um, and the thing is, whenever you place trust, belief, faith, and hope in others or even other things, placing all of that into someone or something, you're basically and essentially making that your God. That's all I've got.
Okay. All right. I'm liking the definitely the hitting points here. Now, our good friend Logic Finance, he is here as well. Good sir, how's it going?
I'm good. How are you?
Not too bad, sir. Not too bad. So let just finish this round robin. What's your take so far on this quote? Even though, like Aizen said, you did left a comment about it in the chat.
Yeah, my feeling, like SKC, I disagree with the thinking behind this quote because he is relating trust to reliance and faith. There may be, and there is no direct correlation because, first of all, we need some separation and some discernment. Looking at the quote itself, when you trust someone that is not based on blind faith, which is what faith is. So his thinking is Because someone trusts me, it leads them to put their faith in me, and by doing so, they elevate me to the status of a king and then possibly to a god. That is not true. You trust someone based on their words and their actions. Faith is something completely different. Faith is when you have a complete lack of words and actions, a complete lack of demonstrated performance, but yet you you assign you assign some sort of value and worth to this person based on nothing. So it is not trust. That is why we have the word trust, which means one thing, and we have the word faith, which means something else. We also use the word reliance. Now, again, that comes from something else. And coming back to the difference between faith and trust, I'm sorry, coming back to the quote, the earlier quote about how an attack from where you're a betrayal from where you're least expecting it is more devastating than a betrayal that you can see. Because when you and here's my link, just bear with me. When you trust someone, that is the last person who you're expecting to betray you. So because you are not expecting that person to betray you, you have not prepared for that attack. It leaves you open and vulnerable to attack from that direction. More often than not, this is someone or something that you have placed your trust based on their demonstrated loyalty, their performance, their words, and their actions. So you have not prepared any defenses, whether it be physical, mental, or emotional, from that direction. This person or thing more than likely has intimate knowledge of your defenses, so they can cause tremendous havoc. And there is the emotional and psychological toll because a betrayal from someone or something who you were least expecting it from hits you 1,000 times harder than from a direction from which you are expecting it from. So again, I disagree with that statement that trust necessarily leads to blind faith and that you should have trust in no one. Because if you have trust in no one, what friends will you have? What subordinates will you have? If you don't trust that your subordinates will follow their instructions and follow their given tasks and support you as needed, then they're not subordinates. Then you have to find and trust those who will meet those criteria. So, no, I absolutely disagree with his statement on trust and faith.
Okay. Wow. This is really a really good topic, and I definitely want to linger a little bit longer. But let me just put this out here for everybody to kind of think about a little bit. So within that quote, he talks about how humans have the tendency to seek those who are on their level, if not those who are superior, and that is how kings are made, how gods are born. And so I think we definitely know the difference between trust and faith. Now, can we say that the human capacity for faith to just blindly follow an individual or an entity, no matter as far as their background, no matter what, plans they have for them and everything, do you think that's kind of a human weakness to have this blind faith that essentially you have no choice but to look for an individual that is somehow higher than you in order for you to have some sort of meaning in that life? So this is open for everybody.
Yeah, I got a question. What was exactly Aizen looking for if he was actually searching for somebody just as powerful as he was, if not better than him? Just
He he wasn't actually searching for. He was searching to become um over everyone.
Ah, okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And to give some context for that, JJ, so when Sosuke Aizen was a captain in Soul Society, he really felt that there was nobody on his level that could challenge him, that could kind of make him feel like he is under someone else. And Soul Society, if you read about the whole the Soul King and everything, they were kind of their own autonomous, you could say, type of society where there's a king, but the king doesn't really interact with his citizens. So Sasuke decided for himself, well, hey, if there is no king that actually interacts with his people, then I might as well take his spot and become the ruler of all the spiritual realm, not just Soul Society, but even Waco Mundo, where the Arancars live and everything and whatnot. So for him, he thought to himself, because there's nobody on my level or equal to my abilities and skills, I might as well make myself the king and leader of the society. Otherwise, people have no clue in regards to what they should be doing. So that's why he kind of leads into that particular quote.
Ah, okay. Now, I think I'm understanding a little better now. So, like you said, with that particular society, like the king doesn't interact with the citizens whatsoever, like just barely. So I can kind of see where he's coming from now, trying to pretty much correct the wrongs of the old king, so he can kind of, like you said, take his spot and pretty much right all the wrongs that the king has done. I mean, if he had any wrongs to begin with, because he's not interacting with people. So I can start to see a little bit more why Eisen is the way he is. Like he is a man on a mission, literally.
So, if you don't mind, could you explain that just a bit further? He was he upset with the king for not interacting with people, or
He basically he's upset with the way things were. Yes, he was upset that he basically was absent. He had done nothing. Like I said, when you probably missed it when I said when the Gotei 13 were originally established by Yamamoto Ginryu Sai. I mean, they were nothing more than a band of killers and thugs who in turn gave, you could say, politicians and people with money the means to be the same, and then turned around, and that basically ended up giving those weaker individuals, but with money and influence, even more power and say so than them whenever they had the power to actually change things and make them better. So basically, he was upset. You could kind of see when you get into the story more that he's upset that the Soul King did nothing to change this, did nothing to get rid of the old things that had everything all screwed up to establish something new. So basically his whole mindset is, if he's not going to do it, who better than me?
Right. And essentially, like Isaac was saying, the Gold Tide 13, definitely once we get into the Thousand Year War, that's going to be coming up later on this year, they were more ruthless than Aizen. They just killed to kill. There was no thought behind it. There was no reason behind it. They just kind of killed to be killed, and that eventually led to them establishing Soul Society, where they go on to become Shinigamis and do pretty much anything they want, but they had no governance. And for Sasuke Aizen, he was like, well, none of these people here are any stronger than me, but yet I'm supposed to be subordinates to them just by rank or just by tradition. So I'm going to screw the whole system. I'm going to become king of whole Soul Society and everything else tied to it, and I'm going to run it just the way I want to run it. Essentially, that's the whole gist for Sasuke Aizen being the main antagonist in the series.
So, my take is this: he's basically putting forth a treatise on the nature of kings, and higher than that, organized religion. Because basically, what is a king? A king is a god on earth. What is a god? A god is a king up in the quote unquote heavens. Here's the thing though. He overlooks a basic, what I call, in my opinion, a lacking in human nature. Despite everything that people say, at their core, people do not want to think for themselves. They don't want to be self reliant. People want someone to rest their head on their chest, pat their head, and say, "It's okay, baby. I'll do all the thinking for you. I got this. I'll take care of the heavy lifting." That's essentially what people want. People want to be told what to do. People want to be told what to think. People want to be told how to go about and live their lives. And once they have been given this framework, they then go about and then live their lives within this narrow framework that they have been told to do, which is why people follow each other. The vast majority of this planet are sheep. Even the quote unquote alpha dog, I'm the leader of the pack, I'm the one in front. But here's the thing: you're still a part of the pack. Your comfort and your self worth comes from being a part of the pack. You're in front, yes, but you're a part of the pack. You are in essence a sheep yourself. And most people, no one wakes up and says, "Oh, I'm a sheep. I go along and I follow everything else." But yet, that's what the vast majority of people on this planet do. So, whether it be a king or a god, people are looking for someone to tell them what to do, how to think, a framework in which to live their lives. So the problem is not with gods or kings. The problem lies within that very essential nature of humanity, that realistically, very few people don't follow that group thinking. The true independent thinker never wants to be a part of the crowd or the group, rails against the king and rails against organized religion. So again, I in this thinking put forth by Sosuke, I have to disagree because he's looking in the wrong direction for the nature of the problem which he is trying to attack.
That's definitely interesting. And actually that kind of leads into another quote that I want to share with the panel. And we'll definitely this one will be a an open one so anybody wants to give their opinions they can go right ahead. But here's a second quote from Aizen. He says, "Seek not beauty in battle. Seek not beauty in death. Consider not your own life. If you wish to protect that which must be protected, then strike while your opponent's back is turned." So, gentlemen, your thoughts on that?
I guess I would say that basically when he speaks of battle and seeking to protect something, if you're going to have to truly fight for something, it's gonna get ugly. Um,
Mm.
especially if you're fighting for your very survival. It's something that's not going to be pretty. So you shouldn't be fighting for something. You shouldn't be fighting in a pretty manner. You should just simply be fighting to win by whatever means necessary.
Yeah, just from the few clips of Aizen fighting against a lot of these Soul Society members, like I remember he's going against like 12 to 15 guys at a time. So even when he's fighting all these people by himself, like he's covering all his weaknesses, right? Like he's trying to make sure that he has no opening holes whatsoever. So I guess when he made that quote, I guess it's kind of akin to his whole battle strategy when he has to go against his enemies and stuff like that. So he's making sure that there are no there's no openings that you can try to exploit whatsoever against them at all. That's kind of the thing that I noticed in his fights on the series too. Like I just thought that was kind of crazy. Like, he just seemed really, really overpowered, but reasonably overpowered.
Interesting.
Yeah.
One thing I want to put out, maybe to kind of help tie in with this quote. My opinion, essentially what Sasuke is saying in that quote is you have to be ruthless in battle. Like Aizen Sama said, battles that require life or death, those type of scenarios, you can't expect your opponent to play by the rules. And unfortunately, we have members of society that feel like, well, hey, if we're going to do this type of thing, you got to follow the rules and everything. But when it comes to life and death, either you want to survive or your opponent is going to survive. And so you have to do what is necessary to keep yourself alive. Even if it means, hey, when your opponent is not looking, you may have to strike them down. And to me, I get that because it's almost like, okay, who who's going to look after you? If nobody's going to look after you, then you should be the first one to be like, well, hey, I am going to make sure I do what's best for my interests before I consider somebody else's. And especially in a life or death situation, it's either you or the opponent, or in some cases, multiple opponents. And so that's where I kind of get with that quote where he's saying, hey, you got to be ruthless. Feelings don't matter when it comes to life or death. When you really want to survive or you need to protect someone or people, sometimes you're going to have to strike when the opponent is not looking because it's life or death. So that's what I kind of got from it. But Logic looked like you was about to say something too.
Yeah, my take on that. First of all, I see someone has been reading The Art of War by Sun Tzu, but with these quotes. My take on it is, you know, as he says, as he writes here in his book, seek not beauty in war, nor beauty in death. There is no glory in war. There is no honor in war. Generals who have fought many wars and many battles will come to tell you there is nothing glorious, there is nothing honorable about war in and of itself. Do not enter war or combat or battle seeking glory or fame or riches or personal aggrandizement. Enter it cold, logical, focused, zero emotion. Know what your clearly defined goals are. Establish your tactics. Adjust your strategy as needed to attain your goal. And at the very end, do not be afraid to use the most ruthless and brutal methods necessary to obtain overall victory. It is not about, again, anything emotional. Because when you make it emotional, you lose. The one who separates his emotions from combat wins. So you have to always be, again, methodical, logical, no matter how brutal or cruel your actions or tactics may be during battle. It is done so for the sole purpose of attaining victory, nothing else, and having achieved the mission goals, move on. Just my personal take on it. But again, I am a very unemotional person.
Right on. SKC, your thoughts on that?
Hmm. hmm. Uh there was a lot that everyone else covered. And um again, some of it I agree with, but I will just put it at this. I think at least Aizen was being consistent, because if you don't believe in trust, then that line of reasoning makes perfect sense. And so it's like I applaud him for that, man. I'm super consistent in how to get things accomplished in war. Um, I think it would be difficult to I think it would be difficult to keep subordinates in line with that. You would have to rule by absolute power and be basically in a mode
Excuse
of
me 1 second, SKC. Rule? Are you saying rule by absolute power or rule by absolute abject fear? Having them fear
I would say
you.
both, because you would
Okay.
have to have them in a mode of fear, or be using a tremendous amount of energy towards manipulating them at
And
all times.
and just to clear it up, he did all of that.
Hmm. Yeah. And that right there, it has been well proven and established. And it's interesting that we're using these quotes. Sun Tzu also states, the best leader knows how to generate and foster feelings of trust in him from his subordinates. If you rule by absolute fear, you don't tend to get the best results from your subordinates. Yes, they have to have a healthy dose of fear, fear of reprisal, fear of losing their positions, but they should also have the trust that you foster a environment where you are open to suggestions, open to thought, open that they are not living under the fear of, if they have a single hair out of place or if they misstep, that you're going to literally chop off their head. That tends to not yield the best results as some leaders think that it does.
Correct. Yeah, you are correct. And just to reiterate, yeah, he did all of that. Certain individuals that were more intelligently astute, he allowed leeway, and others that were a little bit of a loose handle, he allowed leeway as well, as just to see what they would do and how things would play out and react as well.
Interesting. This is getting really good. I have another clip coming up, um, courtesy of Aizen Sama. And
Back in, we'll see if it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
usually if I play
I
something and it goes too long, as soon as I stop it about 2 minutes in, they'll restart the stream.
yeah, I was getting a bit concerned about a possible
Yeah,
copyright strike, but I guess I'll save my thoughts for them.
Oh, okay. I see the comments now. Dang.
yeah. I'm telling them hold on. It should come back in a moment.
Okay.
I've been in others where it's done that, and they let them come back once you stop.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, overall, from what I was seeing, I mean,
We're back now. My bad.
there are a lot of strengths, extreme strengths to Eisen, and I think overall, he's a great character. I really do. My only criticisms are is that I find that in almost using the words of Thomas Sowell, with certain things there are trade offs, and so when you get into even for villains, when you get into certain extremes, then those, even some of the most ruthless extremes can become liabilities. and well, I'll just leave it at that.
You know, as Casey, you practically took the words right out of my mouth because I was going to say that I agree with some of his thinking. I like his overall philosophies, but he's too extreme, and that there is a military philosophy, force combat, that says you must be completely and totally dedicated to what you are doing. Consequences and costs be damned, but that you have to know where the line is to stop because that leads to single-minded obsession, and single-minded obsession then changes to the path to self-destruction, which can then have the opposite effect of your military goals. And Machiavelli would apply that to both combat and political and personal. Sun Tzu, of course, would make it more military and also spiritual. So I agree. In order to echo basically what SKC said, he was too committed in certain things, too extreme in certain things, and that can be and often is a liability or worse.
And you were both right about him being very extreme. The thing is, whenever you've seen it, I've seen it all, except for all of the manga. I've read, quite a bit to get the gist of everything. But up the basic first 366 episodes that I've seen, um, you later find out in the manga how ruthless what he was facing was and how extreme it was. Well, actually, you kind of get it. You get it early on, um, with Ichigo when he's trying to actually change the whole of society, the whole of Soul Society. So that's one thing that you begin to learn. The only way to combat one extreme is with another extreme, and I think that's essentially how you look at how he was created and born. But
Yeah, I understand that
mhm.
thinking, and Sun Tzu directly speaks to that in his book. The best way to combat one extreme is with another extreme. But Sun Tzu quickly cautions the problem is when one holds to that extreme as their countermeasure, they can quickly become that very same extreme themselves, getting lost up in that extremity, as it were. One has to guard against and caution that happening. Strike fast, you use that extreme as your counter, and then quickly return back to your baseline and to your methodologies. Because then when you do that, you're no longer playing chess, you're playing checkers. It's lob, return, lob, return. The idea is to always keep your enemy off balance, draw them towards you, and get them playing your game. If all you're doing is constantly countering and countering and countering their extremity with your being extreme, you've already lost. Because Sun Tzu says all battles are won and lost in the mind before they are ever fought. Just
You know what
Yeah.
it reminds me of,
yes, sir.
Logic's Finest?
Yes, sir.
The the extremes with Sherlock and Moriarty and how they uh when they went over the the waterfall's edge,
Yes,
it is like, okay, yeah, both were at their top, everything, but what's the result if you take it to that extreme?
exactly.
Yeah, so um it just uh,
Yeah,
yeah,
I get it.
yeah.
Because realistically speaking,
Mhm.
and again, we have to understand it's a film, but
Yes.
that set reality of that film, they both should have died. But because we have to have Sherlock Holmes survive. He has his little breathing apparatus so that's how he survived the fall down the falls. But when taken to that extreme, Sherlock realized the only way that I can win is I have to do the thing that is so extreme he would never see it because it literally means we both die, and they should have both died. But again, they didn't because, granted, it's a film and you can't kill off Robert Downey Jr. as the title role. I get it, but that speaks to what SKC just said,
Yeah.
and what I'm saying. When you go, when all you're doing is just countering one extreme with your extreme, countering his extreme with your extreme, it it won't end well because now you are no longer playing chess. You are no longer dictating, controlling the way that things go. All you're doing is just counter back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. That's checkers. And that is not the purpose. That is not how you win when waging combat.
Yeah.
The,
Oh,
the
my
last
bad. Go
thing I'll
ahead.
say before I head out of here, because I gotta get back to something. Um,
Mm.
I forget where I read this. It was an old story. Um, I don't know. Maybe Paul will know where it's at, but uh, it was a story similar to Aizen's, but the bad guy that in the story, he's fighting the protagonist, and the protagonist believes that he won because he ultimately vanquishes the bad guy. Nevertheless, the bad guy's final words were basically, "It has been accomplished." And the good guy says, "Well, how so? You fail." And he said, "Yes, but you took the extremes that you would have never before. And now I have created a new me in you."
And
Mm,
I'm glad you said that, SKC, because that's
there you
what
go.
that was we were showing in that clip just now. Aizen was pretty much grooming Ichigo in essence to be his predecessor. So the later part of the clip that we didn't get a chance to see,
I think you
it,
mean successor, not predecessor.
oh, okay, yes,
Yes.
excuse me,
Successor.
successor. So in the clip that we didn't see towards the end, Ichigo asked him the question, "How what would you set me up for this anyway? Of all these battles and whatnot." And Isaac goes on to tell him, "Because you was the perfect specimen from the day you were born. As soon as I found out who you were, I knew that I needed to elevate you to be able to get stronger in your abilities and all. So I purposely set up all of these traps, even though I had other agendas. I purposely set up all of these traps and all these battles just so I can get you closer to my level. And now, even if things all else fails, you are essentially a carbon copy of me." And when we get into the Thousand Year War, there's definitely a lot of things that Ichigo does that pretty much is a reflection of Aizen, and he actually comes a little bit towards Aizen's side in thinking. So that's a perfect example, SKC, of the villain or the bad guy saying, "Yeah, my overall plan may have, well, not overall, my specific plan may have failed, but overall, I have created another successor that will still carry on my way of thinking."
I,
I can, off the top of my head, because there are plenty of characters, there are plenty of genres that this is played out. Off the top of my head, something that you guys, I'm sure, would be very familiar with. There have been several times the Joker has told Batman, "Well, look how far I pushed you. Or there have been several times where Lex Luthor has told Superman, "Look how far I pushed you. I turned you into me. Look what you had to do just to catch me. You were so obsessed with me that you became me. I created you in an image of me because you were so obsessed that you pushed yourself to the extremes, and I pushed you, and I enjoyed every second of it." Now, again, this is something that plays out in many genres, but off the top of my head, those are two that I know you guys are familiar with, because the others, I don't know how familiar you may be with.
And
Eh,
that's what I
oh
was
my
kind
bad.
of wondering about at the very beginning when I was asking, why was Eisen upset with the original character that he, the king? And I wonder, in a way, did he not become like the king? Because I
No,
mean, pretty much people who don't trust each other, don't trust others. They're not really good communicators.
I I would say whenever you get to the 1,000 Year Blood War, you actually end up seeing that through Aizen's time and being in Mukin, he thanks Geen because Geen is the one who actually end up pushing Ichigo to the point to where he could actually realize his potential. He was already strong enough. He just didn't break the ceiling on what he could actually be. Um, and it ends up being that Ichigo, they both influence each other, um, actually in a positive way. And there's some more, some more material I gave Sigma that shows um, how Ichigo had that influence on him as well. It's almost like through Gin, he got a brother in Ichigo.
Interesting. I'll be watching the rest of it, and I'll listen into you guys. But like I said, I gotta head back out, family stuff. But
Gotcha.
thank you for having me on, and man, I'm really interested in Eisen. It was other than I criticized him, but I mean, it's a fascinating character.
Yes.
SKC, before you run, in a few hours myself, I have to sprout some wings, and I will be back on the western side of the pond. But I'd like to have a conversation with you about a few things. But trying to find you was like trying to find Jesus.
I'm trying to be like Kitty Gakade.
I see.
Oh man, that's
I
funny.
Hey, the
see.
Shinobi, that's it.
I see.
Man, but SKC,
Thanks.
we'll definitely catch you next time, good sir. And next month
Be well.
is one of your favorite characters coming up.
And I got a lot of criticisms for him as well. So I mean,
Who might that
yeah,
be?
Megatron.
Yes.
yeah,
Ah,
yeah,
Megatron.
lots of criticisms, man. A lot of things he did incorrect, but um, again, you guys enjoy and Eisen, man.
Yes.
Uh, I'm listening in keenly because I think that you understand the character much better than I do. So please be liberal with your explanations.
Hey,
He is in
SKC,
character.
before you run, before you run, you have to go. I leave you with this thought to ponder, SKC. We live in a twilight world, and they're all friends at dusk.
Hmm. Hmm. Email me, PB. So we can have that chat.
All right, SKC, good to catch you, sir. So we'll go ahead and move to the final segment of our
Okay,
discussion,
later.
and that is one of my favorites to kind of talk about. Can you survive in this world? So what we mean by that is this. So we're talking about Sasuke Aizen, his philosophies, what he believes in, why he does the things he does. So I think I believe we all have a good understanding of his thoughts and his beliefs and why he does the thing he does. So now it comes down to the question: can you survive in the world of Sasuke Aizen? So what we mean by that is, can you survive in a world where he is the ruler and pretty much he rules over the whole planet and all? Or you live in a world where everybody thinks exactly like Sosuke Aizen. So I'm gonna start off with Aizen-sama. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, the likelihood that everyone would be thinking like him is is like very much improbable. But but I think it's if you are competent in any type of way of intelligence, executing things, I do think you have a very good chance of surviving in his world. Um, if you have any complexity to you, he he will keep you alive just because you are interesting and he wants to see what you will do next. But I mean, competence, intelligence, and then of course, being it is an anime, if you had these supernatural cosmic powers, and you have some modicum of intelligence to understand what's going on, and you're not in his way, yeah, you have a very good chance of surviving in this world.
Hmm.
Nice, nice. JJ, your thoughts?
Now, if I were to live in a world where he is the sole ruler, and pretty much like what Aizen was talking about, like as long as I follow the rules, I'm not trying to do anything sneaky that he doesn't know about, and I pretty much has a use for him in any kind of way, whether it's like a subservient role or just being like a deer without headlights, just ramming into people, or just kind of be like an enforcer of his. Okay, yeah, I can see myself living in this world because I can keep surviving at the end of the day. But if I found any kind of problems or flaws in his agendas, and if I were to just to like start thinking more like him, like, man, I can do this better than he can. He doesn't know what he's doing. Then yeah, I might have my life cut short because I may not have enough trust and support of everybody in order to overthrow someone like Isaac. So yeah, it's like a 50-50. So I do what he says, yeah, I'll live. But if I don't, then oh boy,
Mm,
got a problem.
that's that's interesting. Honestly, I feel like with exactly what Aizen Sama said, I think as long as you are intelligent, competent, and I will also add ruthless in regards of, hey, you need to do what's in your best interest in order to stay on top of things, or stay on top of the group or the pack, then for the most part, myself, I think I would have no problem living in a world where Aizen Sama, or excuse me, Sasuke Aizen is, running things. To me, I I believe his philosophy is more on the lines of survival of the fittest, and the strong will rule the weak.
Yeah,
So, in other
dog.
words, yeah, in other words, if you can make yourself useful in his society and actually, uh, uh, um, you know, be on top of whatever group you're with and all, you'll be fine. I I think Sasuke has much respect for an individual who is just as ruthless as he is when it comes down to looking after yourself. To me, that's where that kind of drew me more so to a character like Sasuke Aizen, because most people look at him as like, oh, he's just selfish. He only cares about himself. He don't care about other folks' feelings and everything, and he just go about things that just makes no sense. But in essence, it's pretty much like you have to look after yourself, because who else is going to look after you? And if you have somebody looking after you, you're pretty much subjugating yourself to being under somebody's rule. Because um, Logic's finest, he had to drop off, but he said it best. Human nature they want to be ruled by somebody or some group. And whether that's a king or that's a god or some type of group that has more power than them, human nature dictates that they much rather be subjugated than to actually think on their own. And that's where I feel like, yeah, 90% of today's people probably would not make it in Sasuke's world.
That's a big percentage.
Yeah. I would say you might leave a little more than that because I mean you can't be a king with hardly any subjects. But
That's true. That's true.
But yeah, I think he was just looking to remake things better and be an active king in the building and governing of things rather than being absent.
Right. And to, like I said, to me that's what kind of drew me to a character like that, where he believes in I guess you could say independence, but not so much independence, but he believes in, hey, if you're strong and you're able to do what's necessary, by all means, nobody's going to really mess with you. Or nobody's going to really try to be disrespectful towards you because you've proven your worth. You've proven that you actually deserve to be at the top of the food chain.
Right.
And so I think with Sasuke Aizen, yes, he was, you could definitely say he's on the extreme end, but then at the same time, it's just like, well, in the story, who is just as ruthless in the same philosophy as Aizen? Like even the Gotai 13, definitely during the 1,000-Year War, these guys were just killing just to kill. They essentially were more of a nuisance than Sasuke Aizen ever was. But Aizen was like, okay, I am going to take control and I'm actually going to establish means of social order. I'm not going to sit up here and kill off everybody and everything, even though he probably may be thinking a lot of y'all deserve to die. But I'm going to make it so that, the weak can certainly do what they need to do to survive, but the strong will be the rulers of the land.
Yeah. It sounds about it. And he like I said, with his dealing with that last battle he had with Ichigo and being, his time in Mukin, he had time to grow. And Gin knew what he needed more than anything. Even more so than himself. He even goes forward from there on, even thanking Gin for him becoming what he's becoming. And he continues to show his respect and and I guess acknowledgement of Ichigo's capabilities and his will. So he like I said, that's why I think if you show any type of capability as well as intelligence, which he even regarded Urahara being even more intelligent than him. So if you have any type of capabilities, I think you can make that way in his world.
Right on, man. So I just ended the poll in the chat. So I asked the question, do you agree with the philosophies of Sasuke Aizen? So from what the chat has shared, 78% say yes, I am in full agreement with Sasuke and his ways of thinking of the strong will rule over the weak. And then 21% say no, he is off with his thinking and take what you will of it. So I guess you say the audience, they probably feel like they could do just fine in Sasuke Aizen's world. So that's definitely Pretty good. Pretty good poll.
Yeah, yeah, the nice poll there. And of course, it's unexpected. It's not expected for that to go 100%. But I would advise anyone that hasn't really thoroughly looked into it. Look into it. He is a very, very fascinating, and very fascinating villain to look into his mind. There's a lot of layers to peel back there, and yeah, I think you'll if you like looking at that, like studying that mind, I think he'll be one that you enjoy to look into and see his evolution.
Exactly.
His evolution holds no bounds.
No, most certainly not.
Hey, man.
Yeah, that's another thing. Even when you go into the 1,000-Year War, here's a guy who is locked up for I think 200,000 years.
No, 20,000.
Okay, 20,000. He's locked up for 20,000 years. Yet the main villain in that series, Yawik, he is just all so powerful that nobody can defeat him but Aizen. So they literally had to reach out to Aizen while he's in prison in order to get help to defeat Yawik in the 1,000-Year War. That should tell you right then and there that Sasuke Aizen definitely is worth his salt in every capacity.
Even before that, Yavak went there to enlist him because he considered him one of the 5 special war powers, which he got turned down by Sosuke. But yeah, I mean, when your enemies come to you trying to enlist you, it says a lot as well.
Right. And the enemy is just as strong, if not a little bit stronger than you, but he has that much respect. Like, hey man, I want you to join my crew. And for Aizen to be like, I'm good. I don't need all that camaraderie and stuff. Which then goes back to his quote where it's like, I just don't trust people.
Well, actually, it goes back to his quote about courage. That's actually what he told him.
And you know what? Before we end before we end tonight's stream, I'm gonna go ahead and share that real quick so the audience can see that.
Yeah, that was in the 1,000-Year Blood War arc, man.
Right. So this is Sasuke Aizen's thoughts when it comes to courage. So he says, Yavik, you desired a world where fear would no longer be a burden. But in a world without fear of death, people will never attain the hope that is to be found from casting their fears aside and persevering through them. While it is true that people can continue to press forward through the simple act of living, that is in no way comparable to marching forward in face of death while doing their damnness to keep it at bay. That is why people have given that very march a unique and special name. And we go back to the next page. Courage.
Wow.
Yeah. 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 That's another pretty profound, thought-provoking statement right there. That fear of death and failure, creating courage to overcome it.
Right.
No
And
death, no courage.
and honestly, it kind of brings me back to something that Sensei Takai talked about in the interview we did, where he says a true samurai meditates on death and have come to terms with the fact that there is life after death. But if you fear death, you can't live your life to the fullest. And it ties in very well with what Sosuke Aizen just said in that comic strip. the manga, excuse me, where courage is needed if you're going to move forward in life. If you constantly live life fearing death or just fear in general, you're not going to get that very far. And so, to me, that's pretty much spot on.
Yep, no complaints there. Very straightforward.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, everyone has fears, but it's about overcoming them to actually get anywhere in life.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, that pretty much concludes the stream, fellas. First, I just want to thank you all for coming up today on this Memorial Day weekend to have this discussion of our second installment of Villain of the Month. And so, Aizen Sama, since you were the inspiration for this discussion with this particular character, your final thoughts on today's stream?
Well, I just want to thank everyone for coming out. I want to thank everyone that was, came out on the panel to have this discussion and, to change things up, to have different thoughts and holes in what they saw, from JJ to, you hosting it, to SKC and Logic's Finest coming up here. I think it's a great one. I can't wait for us to have more, challenges and when we look at these villains and their philosophies and dissect them and see what we can come up with and see how we can grow and how it affects us and our thoughts and where we be going forward.
Exactly, good sir. And then JJ, what's your final thoughts, good sir?
Well, I was definitely educated tonight on the latest villain of the month in Sosuke Aizen. Learned a couple of different things about his background and why he did the things that he did throughout the Bleach series. So, yeah, very eye-opening. I will definitely try to look more into the story, especially through the anime. So I will definitely remind myself to do that. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in, listening to the Villain of the Month podcast. I don't think I'll make it to June, but July, when Roni Kenshin villain Makoto Shishio comes on, I will definitely be there for that, for sure. Because it sounds like with Aizen, him and Shishio share some similarities, especially when it comes to using people and how the world should be governed. So I think that should be a very, very deep discussion once more. So yes, thanks again for having me.
Man, right on. So yeah, next month our next villain, which is voted on by the people on the panel, we will be discussing Megatron. Definitely, I've seen some similarities too between Sasuke Aizen and Megatron, which I think will help carry over into next month. And then in the month of July, we will be talking of Makoto Shishio, and his similarities and all his philosophies. And then for those who are DC fans, in August, we will be talking about Lex Luthor. So definitely you want to tune into that when we get the discussion going on. But definitely for today's discussion, want to thank everybody that chimed in, SKC, Logic, Aizen Sama, and JJ. This is a very good discussion. I think we definitely delve into some deeper details about Sasuke Aizen, and even more so, I'm definitely looking forward to the anime coming up, Bleach: The 1,000-Year War, later on this fall. So definitely you'll want to tune into that. But even right now, like JJ, if you haven't seen the series, highly recommend watching the series. It's a very great series, in my opinion. As a samurai enthusiast, it's a top 3 anime to watch, and just my opinion on that. But with that said, just want to thank everybody for tuning in. We'll catch you all next time on the Villain of the Month, and we will end the session with the intro again.
The villains. For every good guy, there must be the bad guy. Society looks upon villains with disdain. because they refuse to follow the rules. But are these villains really bad or misunderstood? Are they truly out for chaos and blood? Or are they more willing to get out of their comfort zones than the average Joe? Join us for our Villain of the Month discussion. We will break down their philosophy, their past, and their psychology. And then you decide for yourself if these villains are humans or if they are monsters.